All right, welcome to the CrossFit Grandview podcast. This is podcast number 39. And today, me and our coach, Brad Wilson, are going to be talking about CrossFit and sports performance and how they relate. So first thing I want to do is introduce Brad. Brad's been coaching with us for, about 4 months now?
Yeah, right around 4 months.
So he's been coaching Power Hour, intros, some CrossFit. You'll see him in the level 2 class training. I was really excited to bring Brad on this podcast and just talk about CrossFit and sports performance. Brad, as far as our coaches go, has played the highest level of professional sports of any of our staff. So I was really excited to kind of have him on here. What I'm going to do is kind of turn this over to Brad, allow him to introduce himself, and kind of dive into his sports background before we start kind of just chopping it up on this topic. So, Brad, go ahead and just introduce yourself and kind of let us know your background.
Yeah, appreciate it, Brandon. So, like Brad said, my name is Brad Wilson. I'm a coach here at CrossFit Grandview. I started here about 4 months ago, but before that, I actually played professional baseball. You know, to give you a little bit of background, I'm from around Columbus area. Grew up playing the 3 big sports, football, basketball, baseball, but probably right around the early middle school, early high school area is kind of when baseball started to seem like it started to climb the ladder a little bit for me. And with baseball, a lot of people seem to think that baseball is a very slow, very unathletic sport, but what I want to talk about today is how there is so much beauty in the movement of baseball and how it relates to CrossFit too. But out of high school, I went to Ohio Dominican University, played 3 years of baseball there. Ended up with the Toronto Blue Jays organization, played with them for a few years. Right around the time that COVID happened, I ended up retiring, decided to dive into my love for movement in the form of CrossFit, joined CrossFit Grandview, got a certification, and here we are today, moving around talking about CrossFit.
So Brad, one thing I just wanted to kind of dive into, because I think it'll relate well later on in this, is, so just as far as like strength and conditioning, working out to supplement sports performance, what's your history in that? Like, when did you start maybe going into the weight room? What types of things did they have you do early on? And then how did it progress through, say, middle school, high school, college, professionals? Because I don't have a lot of insight as to what that looks like.
I started out the gym the same way everybody does. The bro workout, go hit chest, squats, curls, same thing. Early middle school, maybe around 13, 14 years old. As I got into high school, you get some strength coaches who kind of have a little bit of knowledge about the movement of the body and how to train well, but you still get very minimal actual knowledge on the aspect of training with efficiency. So it was a lot of doing heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, trying to move fast, being powerful, and being quick and being efficient with your movements. Got into college. Then you start to get a little bit more knowledge around the subject, so you start to train bilaterally. You start to train in all planes of movement, both frontal, mid-sagittal, and transverse planes. You start to train rotationally. You start to train in aspects that result in faster movements and faster muscle contractions as opposed to just pure muscle output. And then I got to pro ball, and everything took like a 180. It was super weird. It was like everything that I knew about training was thrown out the window. We got there and they broke us down to very minimal abilities and movements, lunges, push-ups, things like that, getting back to the basics. And they basically told us that you need to not worry about anything you've ever done before, listen to us. And what we did was we started at ground zero, simple movements like that, built all the way up into Olympic lifts, some gymnastics in forms of pull-ups, and other monostructural movements like burpees and things like that, because they put a heavy emphasis on being able to move your body well before you move other objects well.
Yep.
So it was literally like I felt like I was strong as all get out, fast, powerful, and then they told me, you're going back to square one.
Start the air squat, and push-ups, like our elements kind of like
exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Cool.
You rebuild from the ground up in pro ball.
I like that though. That's smart because they don't know what they're getting with everyone.
Exactly.
I mean, they're getting, people from other countries who don't have, strength and conditioning backgrounds. That's a smart way to do it. Or even just people who've built bad habits and patterns, and they're investing millions of dollars into you guys. So, they don't want you to build bad habits and things like
Yeah.
that. When did you start doing, did you do sports specific like shoulder care routines and things like
so
that?
that kind of picks up around college, but I've always had a little bit of a gifted arm, so I didn't necessarily take it too seriously until I got to Pro Bowl.
Yep.
Then you put all your focus on there because that's your livelihood. You know what I mean? If that goes down, you're done. You're out the door. So we started spending lots of time on not only maintenance but strengthening and flexibility work as well too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was every day, multiple hours a day.
Did they separate what they did strength and conditioning wise at the pro level by positions? Like, would pitchers do something different than the infielders or the outfielders, or did they?
So honestly, it was actually pretty similar across the board. Obviously, pitchers are going to spend more time with arm care. Outfielders are going to work a little bit more in short bursts of speed. That type 2B muscle fiber, quick reaction. Catchers are going to work heavily on mobility. They're sitting in full squat. Everyone has their little caveats, but the basis is to move fast, be powerful, and be efficient with your movement. So overall training programs were super similar. Mm-hmm. Accessory work is where you got your money.
Gotcha. Where they kind of separated the stuff. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And and honestly, in a lot of sports, especially explosive sports like baseball, football, by position, you'll have like small things, but people generally just need to be very strong and fit. And I think that's a good segue into what I wanted to talk about is just doing CrossFit as a supplement for other sports. And we'll talk about that in a few different ways, but the overall aim of CrossFit is increasing work capacity over broad time and modal domains. So basically just getting better at everything. Running, rowing, weightlifting, gymnastics, and everything sort of in between.
Solid baselines across the board.
Yes. And if you really look at it that way, you can't get mad at it. I think a lot of people want to get too sports specific with things, and then what happens is you build a lot of deficiencies. Mm-hmm. You'll be imbalanced. You'll have some muscle groups that just haven't came up. Mm-hmm. You'll create injuries that way. So a good GPP program, it doesn't matter what sport you're in. I think everyone needs that, especially in the off season. Mm-hmm. And that's what it kind of brings me. Like the first little note I have is just off season. And when I started just coaching strength and conditioning back in 2007, myself, Graham, Ralph, all these guys, we worked at a place called Sport Fit, which in a lot of ways was one of the big things that launched CrossFit in Columbus in general. A lot of like the gyms and stuff you see around here kind of came off that place. But what we were doing is trying to train high school athletes of all different types of sports. And we created a program. The longer we were in it, the more it looked like CrossFit until it just turned into CrossFit. But what we really figured out, it didn't matter what sport, we'd have baseball players and football players all working out together. And with this kind of competitive, like part of CrossFit is it's a sport itself, so it gets people really engaged and they like it and they get more compliant. Yeah. We can get, into the minutia of like the programming and everything. Yeah. But the way that it's set up, and I've seen you latch onto it that way, coming from a sports background, like you got into like that level 2 class that's kind of competitive, and you're addicted to it. Mm-hmm. You get these kids and these guys training in the off season, and they find something they love and they're really passionate about, and they get addicted to fitness. Like these kids would come out of, training with us for 3 or 4 months and go into their sport. And they'd got super into beefing up their numbers on their deadlift and bench, and they're running, and they thought it was cool to lay on the ground and be tired. They had such a competitive advantage when they would go into it'd be kids who were maybe wouldn't make their team. And then all of a sudden they're starting, It was so cool. I'd never seen, especially with younger guys, an off-season program that built athletes. I'm just thinking of if they're doing, slow drills like this and walking. Like, that is so boring for, you know, a 13-year-old dude,
exactly.
you know, playing a sport. So, I know you didn't get to experience much of. Did you work out at Ralph's a little bit?
I don't think I ever did. No,
Did you do baseball lessons there?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
We did that. We did our baseball lessons with Graham in the summers over in New Albany.
Gotcha. You didn't get to do too
We
many
didn't
of
do
the
CrossFit workouts.
Gotcha. Okay. We did a lot of that with some of the Gahanna players, but I just saw kids and athletes, and we worked with some college athletes, take off like you've never seen. It was really cool. So off season, I mean, for any sport, you know, you're working on the 10 physical skills, your cardiorespiratory endurance, stamina, strength, flexibility, power, coordination, agility, balance, accuracy. You're working all these skills. So when you get into like your preseason conditioning for that sport, you are, you know, light years ahead of the rest of the crowd. What I think is really cool is you're gonna work out, like, say you are even like a baseball player. They'll tell you to stay away from your shoulders a lot. They'll try to avoid that. Mm-hmm. But if you can do it in a safe manner and you're not being crazy with the athletes, they're going to go in there with a really strong shoulder girdle that's going to be protected, not babied.
And I'll admit to 100% hand to God that I swore against CrossFit for the longest time. And I told you this when I started working here. I was like, oh, it's horrible to put that much weight over your head. It's horrible to move your body with that much weight in different positions. And I'm telling you, if I had CrossFit in my life 7 years ago when I first started playing baseball, it would have made a huge difference. Yeah. Because my body has... when I finished playing pro ball, I was like, oh, I'm in the best shape of my life. Great athlete. I am truly in the best shape of my life and probably more than I ever will be in my entire life right now.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it. Like, the transformation you made here, it's pretty cool. I know, I have an example that transferring from CrossFit into a new sport, and I remember... It's jiu-jitsu, so you're like wrestling and stuff. And there's a position called the guard where I was on top. I was in someone's guard, and so their legs are wrapped around me, and typically what they want to do is break your posture. So they'll pull you down into them, and if you're close to them, they can roll you. It's called a sweep. They'll like roll you and get on top of you, things like that. But at the time I had, you know, mid to upper 400s deadlift, and the guy is trying to one arm pull me down and break my posture, and he's not a huge guy, and he's trying to do that, and you could tell he was used to just like pulling someone down. My back's just locked in, and I remember I just stood up, and he literally like hoisted off the ground, and it was new to it. I didn't even know what I was doing, and they're like, wow, you have a really strong back. And it was like some little things like that that it's just like a capacity that CrossFit would give you that, say, if you were just like jogging and doing push-ups or something, or even benching and doing a traditional weightlifting program, like at a gym on machines, you wouldn't have a back that was locked in that way.
General readiness.
Yes. So the next thing I want to kind of get into is applying it to specific examples. Ones I'm most familiar with, and then we can get kind of theoretical with some of it, I think would be kind of fun. So things I'm most familiar with, first and foremost, and a lot of the people who are listening to this podcast, it's just training for CrossFit competition. The first 5-6 years I was into CrossFit, I was personally really into training for the competitive side of it, trying to make regionals or make a team or go to the games and do things like that. And, you know, I wasn't the highest level CrossFit athlete, but I was trying, and that was my main focus. And what that training looked like, it was training biased toward the sport of CrossFit. So there was a little sports specificity, and we do that in level 2. You know, it was 5 to 6 days a week. We did daily practice on highly technical skills. And what we were trying to do is get physically dominant across the board in that broad time modal domain. So we were, you know, hammering intervals to try and get like your you were rowing to get to be a good rower. We were Olympic lifting to be good Olympic lifters, not so much trying to get some capacity in those areas to excel outside of the sport. It was get so good at those areas that, you know, when they were tested inside that sport, you would excel and do well. What we're talking about here is third wave adaptation. So you have first, second, and third. These are really applied to running, but you can apply them to, the guy who came up with these definitions applied them to running, but you can apply them to just skills and strength as well. First wave adaptation would be like, you know, the first time you get on a bench, the bar's all shaky. You're like, oh crap. And then that second wave, so then you straighten that out and then that's smooth and you can put some weight on it. That's your first wave adaptation. It's all neurological.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a neural adaptation at first.
Yeah, and you're not like getting stronger, really. You just like lock the bar into place, you can put a little weight on it. Second wave adaptation would be like, okay, you go from like, you know, doing a 5x5 bench at 135 to now you can do it at, you know, 205 or something. You know, now you've gained significant capacity in that area. You're stronger. That is starting to look a lot better in sports performance.
Yeah.
Third wave adaptation is we're doing power hour. We're doing a bunch of, you know, presses, Williams extensions, you know, press downs. We may even get like a slingshot shirt every once in a while, future bench. And now we can, you know, we can put 3 wheels on that thing and we can do a competition bench where we're pausing with 335 and pressing it out and we're doing a powerlifting competition. That's a third wave adaptation. That's what we're looking for in CrossFit competition. That doesn't apply necessarily to just like sports. Like going from, you know, 20 kipping pull-ups to 70 isn't gonna like improve your baseball performance the same way going from 5 to 25 will. So that's what I'm kind of talking about when I'm like discussing that. But the ones I really want to kind of get into and just see what your thought is more of using CrossFit as a base for training for other sports. So the ones I really have, I'd say more like the last 8 years, I'm more like an adult weekend warrior. And so I'll come up with like a goal or an event, maybe a couple months out, and then 6 weeks out, I'll start like a lead up. And all it looks like is it's 4 days of CrossFit. I'll typically do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, take Thursday off, and do Friday. And then 1 day of sports-specific training on Saturday. So I've done the pump and run, I think 3 times at the Arnold. So that would be like Saturday, I would bench, maybe do like power hour class or bench, and then we would do a running workout. And we've done groups and stuff like that. Summer shred is an example. We'll do a test a 5K, do a bunch of running workouts, and then test a 5K at the end. And then even the open, how I've done it, I've applied this to just the CrossFit Open for me. This isn't like high level open stuff. This is like, it's like quarterfinal level. The last 4 opens I did, I was right in that quarterfinal level of it. But what I would do is, you know, the 4 days of CrossFit, and then Saturdays, it was just how we programmed the classes anyways. Saturdays would be an open retest. Yeah. So I'd do an open retest, and then I'd maybe handstand walk or hit some extra ring muscle ups. And then I'd be prepped to perform the open workouts prescribed. This is great for recreational athletes. Yeah. This will not, I love this for adults who want to like, especially sports, I think that are very related to CrossFit, like running 5Ks. Even if you wanted to do like an Olympic weightlifting meet, I think you could do CrossFit 4 days a week, and then Saturdays you just snatch and clean and jerk and do that for 6 weeks, and you could perform, you know, well enough to not embarrass yourself at an Olympic weightlifting meet. I haven't tried that yet. It's something I do want to try. But you're not going to win stuff that way. You're not going to, like, I haven't won 5Ks doing that. I haven't, you know, been in the top 5 at the pump and run or anything. I can participate and not make an asshole out of myself.
Yeah. What that does is that gives you a baseline that you can truly do. You could run this program, and then even if you switched your Saturdays every 4 weeks to like, oh, I want to do some arm care for the next 4 weeks, you could go play in a softball game and you're gonna move well. You could do some footwork drills. And some footwork and handwork drills. Yep. You're gonna be able to move like a boxer, like you have been trained. You're gonna have a good physical basis, and then the skills get added on that 5th day of training.
Yep. I love this. This is like my favorite. This is what I think actually most people who are listening to this could really use. Now, that being said, you have to do a CrossFit program, and it does vary a little bit, that's pretty unbiased and really balanced. So what those 4 days might look like is 2 mixed modal workouts. So that would be like one that might be a couplet, another that might be a triplet. You know, most of those being typically in that 12 to 15 minute range. Occasionally you'll get that short burner. Occasionally you'll get that real long grinding one that's 30 to 40 minutes. One workout that is an interval-based one, so hard rowing or running intervals, and then one that's more of just a really focused weightlifting-based one. If all of these workouts are, I'll call them 2012 CrossFit Games-esque training, which a lot of affiliates still kind of plan their workouts. It's going to be like a full strength and then a full Metcon, similar to level 2, but like a watered down level 2 style workout. Those you're going to be banged up, and I don't think you'll have a lot left on Saturday for that. I think if you do this very well-rounded style of CrossFit, it really works well when then you go into that sports performance day, which should be your big day every week. So now what I want to kind of get into is more like hypothetical stuff. Yeah. So preseason, in-season, CrossFit. Now, it was pretty big in a lot of pro sports. A lot of colleges were starting to really use it more in like 2012, 13, 14. I know like the Saints were doing it. Yeah. I remember, you know, the college that Froning was strength and conditioning coach, Tennessee Tech, I think. Yeah. You know, they were doing CrossFit there. I haven't heard as much about it applied to like collegiate sports, professional sports. When I do see what they do in the training room, it more and more resembles CrossFit, but I haven't heard anyone like saying this is a CrossFit
Yeah, we do CrossFit for our workouts,
as much.
But I think that's one of those stigmas that, like, if a strength coach were to say, oh, we do CrossFit, that's not going to ring well with people. So they're going to use the movements and the styles of training of it, but they're not going to call it CrossFit.
Yep. Especially if someone gets hurt, then they'll say it was.
Yeah, oh, it was CrossFit. No, now we can't.
And people get hurt in training,
you
know?
In general.
So I have less experience now at this point, especially in like a full sports season, applying this, especially at higher levels. But I'm just going to kind of go through what I would do as a theoretical approach. As a season or an event would approach, you would start replacing CrossFit sessions more and more with your sport-specific practice or games. Again, I think just hammering a very good general CrossFit-based program in the off-season is the best way anyone can spend an off-season. Be considerate of not getting hurt if you're a high-level athlete and you make money at your sport. They did a really cool documentary, and you can look it up on YouTube. It's just called Guerrero. It's on CrossFit, and it's Dave Castro takes Robert Guerrero, who was a really high-level boxer, a world champion, actually fought Floyd Mayweather back in probably around 2009. Lost a decision, but a really high-level boxer. He takes him pretty close to right after that fight, and they just do nothing but just pure like .com style CrossFit, and just show like where he really lacked capacity and how it really made him just feel overall stronger and better as an athlete. But what he was doing is he was going to get ready for a fight, and you could see like they were going to stop the CrossFit.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a period where you can maintain more of your CrossFit capacity and slowly drip that out. So you're starting to ease back into your sport. Maybe you're doing 2 sport-specific days and then 3 CrossFit days.
Yeah.
And then you're doing 4 sport-specific days and then 2 CrossFit days. And then you're just going full sport-specific after that.
And even though, like, when you say it's full sport-specific, I want people to know that, like, even the most basic forms of sport-specific training is still derived out of a lot of CrossFit movements, too. Like, when you go into in-season and you're just trying to maintain, you're doing a lot of single-leg squats, single-leg lunges, things like that. That falls back to pistols and front rack lunges. And they're all still the same movements. You're just not taking the capacity to such a high level anymore. So you're falling on the same movements and the same concepts, just at a more sustainable level while working on the skills of your sport-specific points more.
Yes. I'm just thinking in my mind, too, almost like you're going into training camp for spring training or whatever it would be, and you're just starting to phase that out slowly. I mean, they're running you on sprints, and you're doing calisthenics and all of that type of stuff. In season. So just when people are training in season, you want to prioritize your sports practice or game first. So one thing, and I just saw a post, it was, again, I love boxing, so this guy, he made a good post. It was always like, it's always like Rocky or everyone's getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to start their running, and he's like, look, I actually didn't like to do that. This guy like boxed in the Olympics. He was like, I actually like to do my sparring and fight training first thing. Like, he's like, and it was more like 11 a.m. and I got a full night of rest. I got 8-9 hours of sleep. And then I would do some extra conditioning in the evening, but it was to supplement that. I had gone all out in my actual sport-specific training. And I was like, thank you for saying that. Because I think so many times everyone gets in this thought process like, they have to get up and do this hard conditioning first and then try and practice their sport. And then they're just like, going through the motions because they're exhausted. So that's why I just put a note like, personally, I would prioritize your sports practice or game, and then your CrossFit could be performed post-practice or game. You could do like a moderate Metcon or something.
What I was going to throw in is that during season, at least for us in baseball at high level, we always tried to train at a minimal but efficient level. Small, sustainable levels of training, but consistent. And they always fell back onto basic movements. That way you had the ability and the energy level. I mean, baseball is a 160-game season. If you're out there rubbing your face against the wall every workout, you're not going to make the whole season. So you'd be minimal, but still efficient across the whole time period.
Would you guys lift during a season like that?
Yeah, we would lift, but I would say load percentage never gets more than about 60%.
Okay.
We're focusing on moving efficiently while keeping power up. Maybe we have some variable resistance like bands and stuff like that, like we do in Power Hour. But you're never getting to that dark spot like you do in some CrossFit workouts.
That makes sense. What I would say too, like in season, less explosive and conflicting movements. Like if you were in season, I wouldn't probably have you do like yesterday's push jerk workout when you were playing baseball. That just wouldn't be a workout you would do, like explosive push jerks, moderate intensity on Metcon. So everything you're just kind of saying. Prioritize GPP and health,
Yeah.
strength maintenance rather than building.
All the training is done with efficiency over the whole season in mind, because anybody can go out and blow their back out for one workout, but to be able to work out every single day and still maintain your performance on the field or on the mat or in the gym, that's the important part. That's the hard part.
Yeah. I think what CrossFit really does in a way too, if people do this, you have, especially if you've done really hard, aggressive CrossFit, it gives you a mental edge in sports because you're going to be tougher. You know? If you're used to racing someone who's super fast, you're getting in there and you're diving on the ground doing burpees and then like looking at the clock and then like falling over, and you've done that, you know, 50 times in the off season, then you get into a game and you're just more practiced at going into that like really dark hole or really like getting tired, and you know, it doesn't matter what sport it is, extra innings or you know, overtime in football or you know, you're fine with that. You know, I just think it gives you a big edge.
To be honest, I think that's probably it's a bigger edge than the physical aspect, because coming from the high level baseball, high level any sport, if you could pick any pro athlete, bring them in, they're going to tell you the mental load of performing when all the lights are on is unparalleled. You can't mimic that anywhere else. When we come in, work out, and get that competitiveness, that you can kind of get a taste of. You'll never feel the same as if you're on the field in front of 80,000 people and you have to make this next pitch. Now, what CrossFit does, or at least it has for me mentally, is when you get to that dark place, we call it a dark place because you're so mentally exhausted that you literally just want to fall over and sleep. But what it does is it teaches you that it's okay to be mentally uncomfortable. And once you're mentally uncomfortable and you can still perform there, everything else gets easier. The game slows down. The workout slows down in your mind. You're not freaking out, losing your mind. Everything is slow-mo. It's almost like a flow state. Everything becomes smooth and easy. And I like I said, if I had CrossFit 7 years ago, I think I would still be playing Major League Baseball at the highest level, because CrossFit has taught me stuff that no strength coach could have ever taught me, even in pro ball.
Yeah, I do. I think that mental aspect that, like you said, is something you can't really replicate without turning your training into a bit of a sport. You know, one thing that I was talking to Brad about that I want to get in here on this podcast that people would never think, and another reason I wanted to bring him in here is I was talking to him a couple months ago, and I was like, Brad, I'm like, baseball players, from what I've seen, now this is on the male side because females don't play baseball specifically, have been historically the best CrossFit athletes, and people would never think that. And I'm like, well, at least in my era, so right off the top of my head, I'm like, Graham, Rich, Froning, Ben Smith. That's 3 champions. So that's the most, you know, that's the majority of the male champions right off the bat, or half of them were baseball players. And, you know, and then I was kind of asking you why you thought that. So I don't know, maybe you could like speak on that. Like, why do you think baseball players are the best, make the best CrossFit athletes? Because you wouldn't think like that's not the kind of capacity you have, you know?
And before I even answer that, I'm going to give more examples that broaden the field out of CrossFit. If you think about high-level 2-sport athletes, compare them across the board, what is their second? Bo Jackson, football and baseball. Michael Jackson, basketball and baseball. Deion Sanders, baseball and football. Baseball is always the sport that tightens people into their other sports. And the easiest way to answer this is baseball is a sport heavily revolved around body awareness and body control. And you might call that athletic ability. Yes, but to be able to control your body in every aspect and every part of the motion, if your body is separated by any part in the kinetic chain, you are not going to be good at baseball. Some people call it like the X factor. Like when guys go out there, it looks effortless for them. Same in CrossFit. The highest level CrossFitters, it looks easy all the time because they control their body well. So that's why I believe that not only just in CrossFit, but baseball players adapt to all situations very well. And it's that hand-eye coordination, body awareness, and body control.
There's a lot more examples people wouldn't even know, like Dave Winfield.
Yep.
He played all 3 sports in college, 20-year Hall of Famer. Danny Ainge, who people might,
Or even you mentioned, like, you see a video on TikTok of Mike Trout goes to the driving range at Topgolf and is hitting 500-yard bombs over the top net. You know what I mean? It's just stuff like that happens all the time with baseball players.
It is. When you told me that right before we did this podcast, I'm like, the body awareness, that makes sense because you have to have so much body awareness. Like, for people watching this, Brad learned handstand walking and the ramp, I think, faster than anyone I've seen. Like, that's a really challenging skill for a lot of people to like chip away. And, you're 4 months into doing like CrossFit and like, you can do the handstand ramp, which was like a big evolution and just like the skill level they're asking you to do in
started
like
stringing together ring muscle ups. It was like 2.5 weeks in.
Yeah. So like the body awareness thing is huge. And like, that's what I've seen like with Ben Smith. Like they were having him run like zigzag cones. And I just remember watching him. And he's not a guy that when you just look at him, like he looked like he would be the twitchiest, fastest runner. Yeah. And that dude it was just poetry in motion watching this guy. Like
all these other guys are like turning full big round turns and he's hitting corners and driving hard.
It was incredible to watch that.
But no, I agree with you. That's going to be controversial and there's going to be some comments on it.
Come on, man.
But if you just look at the facts across the board, that's kind of the way it is. That was Graham
and Ralph as well. Ralph was a little older when he got into it, but from a skill standpoint, when we got into it, the guy we trained under, Ralph Hicks, me and Graham Holmberg trained under initially, he was a baseball player and a small one, like a Billy Wagner, like 5'9", 5'10" pitcher, and he could do he could jump up like onto like those punching bags with the top took off, like land on it, do pistols, walk on his hands. He could overhead squat 225, like the second he learned how to do the skill. Legless L climbs, just from a baseball. That was his sport that he played, and it was like, whoa. Yeah. The coordination and body awareness he had, I've never seen anyone have that before. So, yeah, I don't know why I wanted to just talk about that. No, it's just something that I don't think anyone really knows.
Like I said, that's going to ruffle some feathers, but I mean, that's the way it is.
It's definitely not like just pushing like brute capacity on a rower, but it ends up being what is the hardest stuff to teach in CrossFit. Yeah. Like you can teach running intervals and rowing intervals and things like that. It's really challenging to teach people to like, move really well and efficiently. But I don't know. I don't know that we like completely, conquered anything with the podcast as far as like exactly how to apply CrossFit to sports. But I think if you're watching this, you might have picked something up off of it. And then especially for the weekend warriors, I'm telling you that 4 days of CrossFit and that one big sports specific day works phenomenally well if you're really consistent with it and you do it the right way. Like you can get pretty dang good. I always say you can get about 80% of the way there, which is good. Like at a recreational level, that's all you need to be. You're not going to be a pro athlete or anything doing that. But for most of us, that's a great spot to be in. And you can take on tons of challenges, local competitions, sprint triathlons, things like that. But
it's going to have you generally prepared. You're never going to feel totally caught off guard by any style of training. You may not win every workout, but your baselines will be good across the board.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up right there. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll try and keep cranking these out a little bit faster. Sorry it's been a little while. Catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.